Welcome back to your Real Estate Voice with Barb Schlinker, the weekly radio show that informs and educates you on how to buy or sell real estate with Barb Schlinker, the owner broker of Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty and the host of the program. Now, Barb, a lot of people look at those automated valuations like on Zillow or their neighbor's asking price to determine what their home is worth. So, how does a home seller decide what price to set when they're selling their home? And how do they know how much they'll put in their pocket when it does sell?
Well, Richard, pricing a home correctly is absolutely critical because it's not the real estate agent that decides the price a home is going to sell for. It's actually the buyer making the offer that says, I love it, I want it, and this is how much I'm willing to pay. So, um, if you price a home correctly, it could mean the difference between a whole bunch of buyers clamoring for your house versus very, very few, and the home sitting on the market for a long time, and that's the worst case scenario when you have a home that sits on the market a long, long time. So if you price it too high, the market's going to tell you pretty quickly if you didn't get it right, probably within 2 to 3 weeks. If you're not getting very many showings, if you're not getting any offers, there's something wrong. According to the National Association of Realtors, home sellers that price high and slowly walk the price down and get no results actually will put less money in their pocket. And so, yeah, that does work over time, but you're always better off when you're within the first 30 days on the market to be priced what I call realistically versus optimistically. And it's really hard to make decisions about pricing looking at those automated valuations like Zillow and Realtor.com. I think Realtor.com put their three automated valuations behind a paywall now. You have to pay to get it. But, also the tax assessor has one. There's other stuff in the MLS that uses an automated valuation. Even my cash offer platform has this automated valuation that it uses. And none of those are necessarily accurate. And it's mostly because they don't know anything about your house. They don't know if you've updated your house. They don't know if you have spectacular views. They don't know if you back to open space. They don't know any of these things that attract a buyer for value. And I've seen wide ranges in these automated valuations versus what the actual sales price was for the home, as much as $100,000. We recently helped somebody up off of Highway 83 sell their home, and they had priced it what I call very realistically. The similar sales were just over a million, between 1,050,000 and 1,200,000, but they didn't go for the highest number. They priced it 1,150. We had a bunch of people show up at the open house. We got multiple offers, and it still sold for 25,000 over asking price. That tells me the home is priced right. I've had some sellers go for the slightly low side of the comps to price their home, and that can really drive the prices up. That's one of my favorite strategies, to go on the low side of similar sales and get all the buyers fighting for your home, and they end up making their best offer in order to get you the most money. And that, of course, is market value. I had one recently that similar sales, I really thought the home was worth 675,000. The seller priced it under 650,000, had a huge crowd at the open house, and it sold for 700,000 in just 8 days, $50,000 over asking price. So the way that's done, first of all, is you have to look at similar sales, compare apples to apples, because that's what an appraiser does. And an appraiser has to, if the buyer's getting a loan, they have to substantiate to the lender that the home is worth what the buyer agreed to pay. But you also have to look at the competition. And what does the competition look like? You have to almost put your buyer hat on and go, oh, if I'm a buyer, I was looking for a home like this. This is what I can see what's available right now. And that's what we help home sellers do every single day. Plus, we'll sit down and actually go into all the detail about exactly what the costs are of selling. It's a lot more negotiable now, which makes it a lot of fun after the National Association of Realtors settlement. And we'll be able to talk about that in the next segment. So if you are thinking of making a move, give us a call at 719 301 3900, or you can go to barbhasthebuyers.com. And one of the things that we do is we sit down with you. We show you those similar sales. We show you your current competition. We show you our cash offers, and we will show you exactly how much you'll put in your pocket after it sells. But on balance, what most home sellers are going to be paying typically is at least the listing broker commission, title insurance, closing fees. They'll settle up property taxes. But typically, the biggest expense is paying off their mortgage if they have one. So we'll sit down and actually do a net sheet, give you a couple of scenarios so you can have a really good idea about what you're going to put in your pocket when it sells. But on balance, it's more negotiable than it ever was, and it actually makes it a lot more fun for me. Richard?
You're listening to Your Real Estate Voice with Barb Schlinker of Your Home Sold, Guaranteed Realty. And you can listen to replays of the show anytime you'd like on all of the major podcast platforms, plus Barb's website, barbhasthebuyers.com. If you're thinking of making a move, call Barb, 719 301 3900. Now, Barb, what are some other things to consider about expenses when it comes to selling that house?
Well, let's go back to the commission thing because I get that question all the time. What's your fee? Why do I have to pay the buyer's agent? Do I have to pay the buyer's agent? Why is the buyer asking for me to pay the buyer's closing cost? Don't I have my own closing cost? And basically, it really depends on how the house is positioned on the market in the first place. If you make your home the most desirable home, you're less likely to have buyers come in and go, okay, I want this home, but seller, I want you to pay my loan closing cost. I've seen numbers as high as 25,000, which is a huge number. I kind of had a lender on the carpet last week going, where is all this money coming from? It's like more than 4% of the sales price you're asking the seller to pay. And well, I did all these calculations. I'm like, yeah, but why is that a seller problem? I don't understand. So we were able to negotiate it so it worked out, but it wasn't a seller expense. And that's what you really, when you pick an agent, you really need to work with somebody that knows how to negotiate to get you the best situation for your home. So another thing that some people really worry about, which I find interesting, is back in 1998, they changed the laws about capital gains. And I think, if you don't sell a home very often, you don't really think about it. But before that time, if you sold a home and made a profit, you either had to take your proceeds and put it into your next home, and or you had to buy a more expensive home. Do you remember that rule, Richard?
I do. I mean, so much has changed, and it's one of the reasons I recommend you so highly, Barb. You stay on top of the very, very latest developments. Plus, you've been doing this for a couple of decades.
Yeah, but a lot of people are worried, like especially if they've paid off their house and they can see that they're going to net a good amount of money, and they're in their mind, they're thinking, okay, you're telling me this is what I'm going to net, but you're not telling me that I have to pay taxes on that money. But actually, in most cases, if it's your primary residence, you should not have to pay taxes. If you are single, you can profit as much as 250,000 on the home tax free. Now, how do they calculate profit? What they do, it doesn't matter what you net in the house. What matters is what you sold the house for. You can take off all of your expenses, including the selling expenses, any improvements that you put into the house, and then also what you paid for the house. So if all those things tally up to more than that number, either 250,000 or 500,000, then the amount above that you would have to pay capital gains tax. And it's not a huge tax. It's not based on your income. But I've seen very high-end sales, and I'm thinking, wow, maybe they have to pay capital gain. Then they call their accountant, and they're like, nope, we don't have to pay capital gain. So it's kind of cool. I'll tell people, hey, you can take that money and go to Vegas if you want. You don't have to reinvest it in a home. Enjoy it, or you can reinvest it in a home. Whatever you want to do is fine. It's perfectly tax-free. That was a really good change to the tax code that actually promoted home ownership in the US, in my opinion. Now, the exception to that, of course, is if you are selling a rental property. First of all, there are federal and state taxes for selling a rental property. It can be somewhat complicated calculation depending on when you bought that rental property, because most people on the federal side will deduct they will deduct certain things. They call it depreciation every single year. Works out to be $8,000 to $10,000 a year. So that takes off of your what they call basis, and then on top of that, any you could take expenses off of that. But in general, people are probably going to have to pay some kind of capital gains if they sell a rental property. On and then we've got the state that charges you if you're an out-of-state investor. They will hold back on the sale 2%, and that 2%, they're basically hold it, and then you have to file your taxes with the state of Colorado to see if you owe taxes to the state of Colorado. That only applies if you don't live in Colorado. If you're an in-state real estate investor, you won't get charged with that. Another thing that people could do to avoid paying taxes on rental homes is something called a 1031 exchange, which are actually deferring taxes. And then another question I get all the time is about inherited homes. I tend to work with a lot of folks that inherit homes, and they're worried about, okay, I've inherited this house from mom. They've had it paid off for years and years. Do I have to pay taxes on the gain? But the fact is, you don't. As long as you didn't own the home and you just inherited it near the time when you're going to sell it, about when they passed away, they take the value that it was at the time they passed away, not when they paid 27 or 50,000 for the home 30 or 40 years ago. So typically you don't have to worry about paying taxes on inherited homes. But we'll sit down and we'll go over all that. If you are thinking of selling a property, that's part of what we do. You need to hire an agent that understands pricing, that understands expenses, that understands really what you're going to put in your pocket when it sells. And the other thing we offer on my YouTube channel, just go on YouTube and Google Barb Has the Buyers. You will find a series of videos called What to Do, What Not to Do to get your house ready for sale. And there's a lot of good information on there to help you make good decisions when it's time to sell. So give us a call if you're thinking of making a move at 719-301-3900 or go to barbhasthebuyers.com. Richard?
You're listening to Barb Schlinker, your real estate voice. If you're thinking about selling your home and you want to get the most amount of money, visit barbhasthebuyers.com or give Barb a call at 719-301-3900. Remember, Barb is your real estate voice. You can listen every weekend. When we come back, we'll be discussing how to tell if a realtor is good at selling homes here in Colorado, plus Barb's hot new listings. You don't want to miss those.